All right, we are live. Welcome to From a Southside Point of
Woo!
View with me, Chorizy E, and Josh Nelson from Socks Machine. Josh, thanks for joining, man. Very excited to talk about this episode. What did you think?
Well, first, what else to do on a Friday night when it's below zero in Chicago, right? Feels like Hoth outside. So for all those that work outside, bless you. I don't know how you dealt with today's weather in Chicago. But I love this episode, the tribes of Tatooine. And after the first two episodes, we talked about this in the previous episode on just how much we're getting the Tusken Raiders. And boy, like the world building that's going on in the Book of Boba Fett, one, I wasn't expecting to learn more about Tatooine. Obviously, we were set up to expect more and learning more about the criminal underground of Star Wars. And
Yeah.
the criminal underground has its fingers in a lot of the well-known things about Star Wars, especially the Clone Wars. But after these first two episodes, one, I didn't know that I wanted more content and learn more about the Tusken Raiders. And Chorizy, too, I want more Tusken Raiders
Right? Right,
content.
which I worry about. I worry that they're like setting us up for the fall here. Like they're making us fall in love with the Tusken Raiders, and that's the only reason they would do that is if something horrible is afoot. So I'm a little bit worried about that. But I agree. Like I think that the going into this series, like one of the things I was thinking about was okay, they got Fennec Shan there. Maybe
Mhm.
Fennec Shan's gonna like kind of hold down the fort and he's gonna go off and like meet up with all these other syndicates and be kind of all over uh the near galaxy, like being out in the outer rim and explore some new places. Because I was really like, we've done enough on Tatooine, right?
Right.
I've like 80% of the movies are on it touch on Tatooine, right? So I was a little nervous about that. And you're right though. Like the things that you've learned about it just in this series is way more than what we knew really about it in general. Um, even and then even the fan service to like pull a deleted scene from the original movie, which is so if you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, with Boba Fett walks into that uh, that little place to fight the biker gang, I guess they are.
Yeah.
um, that's Tashi Station, which is where Luke says he's gonna go to get converters or whatever in the
Is
first
it?
movie. And in the deleted scene, he walks in there and there's I think it's like Fixer and Cammy or something.
Okay.
And they that's who those people are credited as in the movies. They never left. They stuck it out on Tatooine. they, they're still waiting for him to pick up those converters, I guess. But
Wow.
but yeah, in
Okay.
the deleted scenes of the movie, like he walks in there and like when he walks through the door, when Boba Fett walks through the door, it is the exact same thing. They really did like they did a callback to a deleted scene. I kind of love that, and I kind of like am shocked at the amount of detail they went into to be like, yes, this is absolutely the same place. We don't want you to think anything else. So that was cool. And but also to your point, like I didn't know half the stuff about what they're talking about. And I think some of it is covered in comics, some of it is in other literature, right? Like the fact that they allude to this in this episode that Tatooine was once kind of like a lush planet, and at some
Mhm.
point it is no longer was. Um, they don't describe that. There's all kinds of stuff in legends about how that actually happens. I don't know that they're going to go that route. It's like some big war. Um, but yeah, so I think I agree. Like it was very interesting. And like the other thing that they talked about in these episodes in Tatooine is the litter. They keep coming back to this of like, where's your litter? I didn't hear your litter come in. All these things. first off, I was completely wrong. He did not dispatch of the mayor immediately, but after they talk to the mayor, after they go to Gar, I forget her last name, her play, the sanctuary.
Sanctuary, yeah.
Then you hear the litter, and we got Hutts. What did you think of the Hutts, Josh?
Well, I like the foreshadowing that the episode did, because to go back to how the episode started, the interrogation of the assassin, the Order of the Night Wind, sounds something like from Dungeons and Dragons. I do like the side comment though, but from Fennec, overpriced. You're paying for the name. I thought that was hilarious, and the fake Rancor drop. But the assassin is speaking in Huttese.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a bit of foreshadowing. And then the mayor drops another nugget that this assassin guild is not allowed to work outside of Hutt operations. Okay, so that's clue number 2. And then you get the third part going to sanctuary, and then you hear the litter. And now you're dealing with the twins. And I'm trying to remember on how many Hutts there are, because for those that just watch the movies, and maybe you're watching the Book of Boba Fett after watching The Mandalorian, you probably thought there's only one Hutt. It's Jabba the Hutt. But no, there are many Hutts. There was 0, right? That was in the Clone Wars.
And then I think Rhoda maybe is
Rhoda.
his son. But there was that whole council of them.
Yes, there's a council of Hutts.
I don't remember these two from that. In fact, no one seems to know who these two are. They seem to be nondescript characters so far.
Yeah, Jon Favreau may be introducing new Hutts into the story, the twins that are always together, which is a bit creepy. And I'm sorry, that platform has to be hella heavy, because
I love that they actually made it like they made it look like those guys were not gonna be able to hold that up. Like you could see it sagging in the middle. You could see the guys like really being like frustrated in their face and like kind of like sweating. And you're just like, they might just drop these two. I mean, like, which would have been hilarious, but like it also like at least it was realistic.
Yeah, maybe they had like a pickup truck that they were actually carrying to mimic the weight that the two Hutts would be on this platform. But I am excited the Hutts are involved, because we talked about this in the last episode. And Boba Fett is the daimyo. Then who's the shogun? And the Hutts have paperwork, as you saw in the tablet.
Yeah.
They've got the paperwork to say this is our territory. And I'm curious in what the paperwork goes up to, because I think another question that we both have, and we'll talk about this in a moment and how that scene ended. But I am glad that the Hutts are involved, because they are one of the most powerful families in the entire underground world of Star Wars. And with the Hutts coming back, this obviously complicates things for Boba Fett, because he thought, I just kill the weak guy that took over for Jabba the Hutt, and now the throne is mine and no one can challenge it. Or if anyone does challenge it, I will kill them. Well, here come the twins, and there's complications. If you kill them, you need permission to kill them.
That's the question. And I think, you alluded to it earlier with the document that they had, which was nice enough of them to put in Arabic, but of course they did not make it in focus enough so that people smarter than me could translate it and have it have us know what it says. Probably on purpose, because there's a question there on what was Fennec talking about when she says we'd need permission if we want to kill. Permission from who?
Right.
Who are you asking permission from? Like, and my initial thought is like, you think of like the mob, right? Like, the whole thing from Goodfellas, right? Tommy kills a made guy. He ends up, walking into an empty room, and he's gone, and there's nothing we could do about it.
Right.
And but like who's above the Hutts in this scenario? Like, is it I've got to ask other Hutts if I can kill them? Because that seems dumb. Like, why would they allow that? But then all of a sudden, also the more logical conclusion is that this is all part, like this whole criminal underworld is going up to somebody, much like in the Clone Wars where it was the Shadow Collective. And like, so is it the Shadow Collective that's still running things? And if so, let's assume that for a second. Who's running the Shadow Collective? Because Maul's dead, I think. I mean, he's been killed for the 35th time. Like, I'm pretty sure he's gone. So it could be Kira, right? Like, Kira could still be around.
Yeah.
It's possible the Pikes took over that. I don't know. It's possible Black Sun took over that. Or maybe the Hutts are now in charge of the Shadow Collective. It's kind of an unknown. So when we were talking about at the beginning, like, who is the big bad of this series, this kind of lends to there must be somebody, but they're still not telling us who it is.
Right. And that was also the case, though, in The Mandalorian season 2. We thought it was Moff Gideon. And then you have the Jedi episode where Ahsoka Tano drops the bombshell, where's Grand Admiral Thrawn?
Right.
And for the Star Wars nerds, Moff Gideon is not the big bad. There is a big bad. The big bad post Emperor in the Star Wars timeline. So I have a feeling in this show we're going to be dragged along to about episode 4 or 5, and then we're going to figure out who the big bad is. Like, there's going to be hurdles. Right now we think it's the twins, but we know that the twins answer to somebody else, and that somebody else may be the one that Boba Fett has to get permission from to kill them, to take over Tatooine. But then again, he can always claim self-defense, right? If the twins attack Boba Fett, and he kills them, is that self-defense? But Hutts are never ones to do the attacking.
Yeah,
they'll keep sending assassins.
I mean, right. Like, it would have been wild if one of those Hutts would have jumped off the platform and attacked him. That would have definitely been a first. I think we've seen the Hutts with like Uzis and stuff before in comics and things like that. But yeah, but to that point, I think to get to kind of the next topic I wanted to touch on here is one of the bodyguards, we'll call them, that came with was a big ass black Wookie. And if you're not familiar with this Wookie, his name is Black Santan, and it's very much confirmed that it's him by a few things. So if you've seen him in the comics, he dresses exactly the same as that. But the bigger thing is, so he once worked for Jabba. He was one of the guys that went around. He was a Wookiee that went around and collected the water tax, right? So the water tax is like, in Tatooine, water's obviously very valuable, as you saw from the train heist. But they would go and just take water from people, right? From the moisture farmers and stuff. They would take water, and that was a tax, basically, to remain under the protection of the Hutts. So he was one of these collectors, and he went to do that on the Lars farm, and met up with Obi-Wan after he took Lars hostage. So there's a fight. Obi-Wan sears him across here, like right around his eye, and that you could, if you close in on it pretty good, you could see that scar is there underneath his fur. So it's, I mean, like, I can't think of a way that it would not be him. But this guy has a crazy backstory. And Josh, I don't know how familiar you are.
I'm not very familiar with this character.
So he's a Wookiee. So he's from Kashyyyk, but he was outcasted from Kashyyyk. So he does not like Wookiees. So that's number one weird thing about this character. And like, I think you'll, I don't know that they'll explore it in this show, but I think if he's in the Obi-Wan show, I could see that coming up. Um, Also, so he wanted to basically hone his murder skills. So he voluntarily became a gladiator. Not like, oh, like, because like the gladiator, like if you've ever seen the movie Gladiator, you know, these are basically slaves, right? So he's in there and he decides, I'm going to become a gladiator. He basically volunteers for this, and it's a really weird scenario how he volunteers. But he goes in, and one of the things the guys that are running this do to make him even tougher is they filled his knuckles with metal. So in the show, you see he has on like these like spikes on his hand, but he also has underneath that metal knuckles. So like I don't know if they're gonna bring that into the show, but I would love to see him punch someone with a helmet on and just dent that thing in. Um, And then but the more important piece here is that he's worked for a bunch of other people in the Star Wars universe. So he worked for Jabba. He worked with Doc Aphra, which in this week's version of who is Sophie Thatcher, we could say maybe it's Doc Aphra. But he also worked for Vader. And when he worked for Vader, he worked with Boba Fett. So, or as much as bounty hunters work together. But so they both worked for Vader at the same time. They know each other. When he called him the Great Gladiator, in almost in jest, you knew that they're making that connection, and that yes, Boba Fett knows who this guy is. So I think it's going to be interesting to see if this is just like a nod, and they're kind of giving like, okay, here's a guy from the comics. It makes sense that the Hutts would have hired this guy, and that's as far as we're going to take it. Or are they going to start to kind of bring in people from Boba Fett's past to kind of test, like, how much is this guy really this new guy? Like this new, I'm not going to torture people. I'm going to run this thing with respect. How many of it are they going to continue to bring in people or aliens that know the Boba Fett that we all knew or we all thought we knew?
Right. Anyone else that you can think of that could be making an appearance soon then in Boba Fett's inner circle?
So Bosk seems like a guy. I mean, they've shown enough Trandoshans that it looks like they're confident in like, I'm not crazy about the way those heads look, but they seem confident enough in them to have them everywhere. So I don't see why they wouldn't have Bosk.
Yeah.
Bosk would be a good one. I don't know. I would like to see Doc Aphra, but I would like to see how that would actually fit, right? Like, I mean, like you can't just keep jamming people in here, but Bosk seems like the one that would make a lot of sense to come in, and putting them against each other would be interesting. Embo maybe. I don't think I've really seen so far a path to Cad Bane as much as I want that to be the case. I haven't seen that just yet.
Who would you rather have sneak behind the Hutts then? The Black Wookie or Cad Bane?
Like working for them or
working for the Hutts?
Working for the Hutts?
Because Cad Bane doesn't really work for anyone. He does jobs, right?
See, yeah, Cad Bane. Also, it seems like he would be important if they needed, like, if he were in the Mandalorian, that would be way cooler. Because if you put him after Grogu, that would be cool. That's the kind of thing I would see him for. Black Chrysanthemum seems like this is perfect kind of like intimidating force that the Hutts would want to bring with them. Cad Bane's less intimidating. He's really great. Like, you would underestimate him, and that would be a dumb thing. But like, the Hutts really don't seem to want any trouble. They just want to like walk in and own the place. And so like, you bring the biggest, baddest thing you could find.
Yeah. What was the phrase? Bloodshed is bad for business. So they're not going to do this publicly, But I do have to say, don't be surprised if you're in the healing pod, Boba Fett, if the palace starts getting attacked.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like you now have this kind of weight of like when are they going to attack? You're constantly looking over your shoulder. That's what they've put in place, right? They've added that element of nerves to it. Like at any moment, like as soon as it seems like okay, things are fine, this is when things are gonna like become a problem.
Yeah.
And so I think uh the introduction of them, the introduction of someone who is familiar with Boba Fett and kind of knows his ways, I think it makes it very, very interesting for how he's going to now kind of live his daily life. And hey, yeah, you're right. That Bacta tank, man. I don't know how often you want to be in there. You better have those Gamorreans all around you.
Yeah, you should. But again, we talked about this last episode and how this is like one of the plot vehicles that sends us back to what happened with Boba Fett since we last saw him in Return of the Jedi in the Sarlacc pit. And back to the Tusken Raiders, right? So
Yeah.
we flash back and we get a train heist out of all the things in Star Wars. Let's really pull out one of the Western staples, heisting a train, Chorizy.
Yeah.
How did you like the whole setup, right? He's learning how to fight with the Tusken Warrior, which, by the way, is the actress is Brie Larson stand-in for Captain Marvel. So when Captain Marvel's doing all the stunts and everything, it's this actress who is the Tusken Raider training Boba Fett. And then you talked about Tashi Station and beating up the biker gang and stealing their bikes.
Yeah.
I really loved the whole setup on training the Tusken Raiders to use the speeders.
That was pretty entertaining. I did like I enjoyed kind of all of those pieces, and I enjoyed him kind of endearing himself to the tribe, becoming part of the tribe. Um, and I think I've seen a few people talk about this, and they're like it has very you know, people are talking about like Dances with Wolves kind of vibes. For you younger guys, the blue version of that, Avatar, But I think another movie that a lot of people are talking about is Lawrence of Arabia,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah,
where
I can
he
see
goes
that.
and he goes into the desert and he assimilates with this group. And I mean, there's actually a train heist in that, I believe. And apologies for my Lawrence of Arabia knowledge. I haven't watched that since I was in like high school, like in a class. Um, but one thing that I thought about, a lot of people are talking about Lawrence of Arabia and like, yeah, he's kind of a man without a country and like he's going to go and join up with this tribe. And part of that movie and part of the problem is that like he's there's Lawrence of Arabia starts with his funeral and people trying to understand who was this guy? Was he a good guy? And it's unclear. And like part of that does attach to Boba Fett. And the other part of that is that Lawrence of Arabia kind of leads these people into a war they're not quite ready for. And that's my biggest concern here is that the war with the Pikes that they just started
Yeah.
is not really a war they're ready. Do you think the Pikes are just going to be like if you're unfamiliar with the Pikes, they're very big in the Clone Wars. They show them briefly in Solo, but they're not good. They're not good actors, right? Like they're bad people, right? Like or bad Pikes. I don't know what they are. Bad aliens. They look beautiful, but like, do you think that they're just going to be like, you know what? We're just going to give these people money. It kind of feels
That's not happening.
it feels like in was it Age of Ultron when they're kind of like when you messed with the Tesseract, you opened yourself up to this type of battle.
Yeah.
And now he's just opened up that small ass tribe to a battle with the Pikes. Now they're on their home turf. They've got an advantage in that, but like I'm really worried that the Pikes are going to come and wipe their asses out.
We'll see if they continue this story, right? Because Boba Fett's not with the Tusken Raiders in the present day, and maybe that changes if he needs backup. And that'd be pretty cool backup, needing the Tusken Raiders to help you out. If you go out to the Dune Sea to have some big bad final with the final boss on Tatooine. But like what I enjoyed about the whole train scene and in the Pike Syndicate is like training the Tusken Raiders to use the speeders. That was funny, especially all the times that they failed jumping between the speeders. Which was great, especially great stunt work as well. Because when they fall, they just like they roll and they just stop. Like it looked like it hurt. And the whole train heist was awesome. Everyone's an amazing shot from a very fast moving train, just being able to pick guys off, and vice versa from a very fast moving vehicle shooting people on a little sand hill. I was very impressed by that. And I enjoyed the when they're on top of the train getting blown back by the engine. That was a lot of fun. But when you saw the masks, I knew right away it was the Pikes. And I love the line by Boba Fett when asked by the leader of the Pike Guild that's on this train, "Are you going to kill us?" And he's like, "Well, that depends. Are you carrying spice?" And he's like, what is spice? What does spice look like? And the box drops and a bunch of spice spills out, kind of like that. This isn't looking good for you. And I'm glad that we now have the introduction into spice, because it's a big part, obviously, of the underground. And spice is a loosely term for any type of drugs used in Star Wars. And a lot of these are mind altering drugs. And it's said that with the Pikes, that they use it so often that it stains their hands and their face. And that's why they wear the masks. The people that we saw in this episode are not heavy users. They're not using their own product, which I believe is the first rule of being a drug lord, based on all the drug shows that I have watched. Don't be a frequent user of your own product. But you are right that the Pikes are just not going to pay some toll to use the Dune Sea to cart their spice. They're going to come with heavy reinforcements. And when it comes to this storyline, why I don't think the Pikes are going away, for those that watch the Clone Wars, you're aware of this, but for those that are not, the Pikes, when it comes to Mandalore, and I still feel like with all these new Star Wars shows, we're going to get some type of Avengers type movie to reclaim Mandalore. They helped the Death Watch Mandalorian Guild take over Mandalore by staging an attack on Mandalore. And thus, Death Watch successfully defended Mandalore against this stage attack by the Pikes, and they got to take over Mandalore. And obviously, the Pike Syndicate gets to benefit that because of the paths as far as their trade routes were by Mandalore. And with Mandalore being a neutral territory, if you weren't approved, they shot you down without questions. So yeah, that really benefited the Pikes. And obviously that was until Darth Maul took over Death Watch, and then Bo-Katan, which everybody saw Bo-Katan in season 2 of The Mandalorian, and Ahsoka Tano, which everybody saw Ahsoka Tano in season 2 of The Mandalorian, came at the end of the Clone Wars to help reclaim Mandalore. Ahsoka defeats Darth Maul in the duel. Maul gets captured, and Bo-Katan takes over Mandalore. The gray area is we don't know what happened after Bo-Katan took Mandalore, and what happened when Bo-Katan lost Mandalore. That may be a future season of The Mandalorian. Maybe that's Mandalorian season 3. We'll learn more, or future Star Wars shows. And the Pike Syndicate was also part of the whole Count Dooku cover-up. if you remember that.
Mhm.
What was the Jedi that Count Dooku was covering up their death? Master, is it Sifo Dyas?
Sifo Dyas was killed by the Pikes. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. So there you go. So the Pikes killed a Jedi.
That's
That
what
was,
starts that's basically the trigger for the Clone Wars. Like, that's how that all kind of goes together. Like, Sifo Dyas is the one who was saying there was going to be this big battle. We need to protect ourselves. Starts the clone army. They kill him, and
yeah.
like everything kind of unravels from there.
Yeah. So those are just two examples, but you were right, Chorizy. The Pikes are not gonna sit back. So I do wonder if we do get another battle between the Pikes and the Tusken Raiders, because the Pikes are not gonna fight you. They have enough money to go get whomever they need to get to fight the Tusken Raiders. So I'm curious if we're gonna get more of those types of scenes between the Pikes and the Tusken Raiders with Boba Fett, if that's another flashback as well.
So
Because we got to get to the point, right, of where he sees Din drive away from the dragon with
mhm,
his gear.
yes. So before we get to that area of it, we were talking about spice there, and spice is something that was, let's say, borrowed from Dune, um, and and
Loosely
so
borrowed.
and so, but here's where my mind went when you had mentioned it, and during watching this episode, I also was thinking about it. Was they've got this train that they're transporting all this spice on. They It's filled with pikes. They're heavily armed, and I'm thinking, like, is there that many people on Tatooine that they need this kind of thing for? Or is there, like, a lot of spice on Tatooine in that desert? And is there something more about Tatooine that we're going to learn about that? While Kessel has tons of spice,
Mhm.
maybe Tatooine does too. And Tatooine is similar to the planet in Dune, where most of the spice, or I think all of the spice, comes from in that story. Um, is Tatooine like? Is that why so many criminals are there? Is that why there's so much like importance on this planet that shouldn't be important? Like, is there like just a ton of drugs there? Like, I mean, like, that's where my mind goes if something is important and it doesn't seem very cool. What, is there a lot of drugs there? So I think, could that be what's keeping all of these criminal kind of syndicates attached to this place, and why it's so important to them? Like, because it
Hmm.
doesn't seem that important. It doesn't seem that like there's that much money to be made on a planet that literally everyone wants to get off of.
Right. Yeah.
Like, collecting water tax seems like a horrible way to make a living. Um, so like, yeah, is there just a ton of drugs there?
Oh, is it the Columbia of the Star Wars
Right.
universe?
Like, because then it makes more sense that these bosses are like killing each other over it, right? Like that
Yeah. Huh.
like it's so important to have this stranglehold on this area, because it is, you're talking the Medellin of Tatooine, right? Like, so, like,
Yeah.
that could make it a lot more interesting of, like, why does everyone care about this place? Why are there garrisons fighting over over a place with like 2 bars?
So are you suggesting that with all the content that we have for Star Wars, and it's a ton, that out of all the movies and shows, we still don't know why Tatooine is that important?
Yeah, I don't know that we do. Like, I mean, I know that the Skywalkers are from Tatooine, so it's, like, in the grand scheme of the story, it's important,
Mhm.
right? But, like, that doesn't have any appeal to the Hutts. or to the Pikes or to Black Sun or Crimson Dawn, right? Like, why would they care about this place? Unless there's a wonderful source of nutrients there uh, after this lush planet has turned to dust, basically.
Hmm.
So I don't know. I think
Hmm.
maybe that's something we could see coming up. I kind of hope we do. But speaking of illicit drugs, I think we need to talk a little bit about a certain lizard. So post train heist, you know that they got all the water from the train, which
Yep.
was pretty cool. Um, the gift that the the chief gives to Boba. I mean, Josh, what did you think about this? Like, so I mean, like I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, I want to see that come out of his little armor at some point. Like, just peek his head out. Like, I thought he had like a new pet, and then all of a sudden it's in his brain, and I'm
Yeah,
just
I
like,
wasn't
oh,
expecting that.
that's something.
I was not expecting that. And that was a good example of spice because the Tuscan chief throws spice in his face that gets the lizard to crawl up his nose. Oh man. That's what I did. Like I felt like my nasal cavity just like rubbing it as the lizard just went up. And that was a huge lizard. Like
It
it
felt
wasn't a
like
tiny guy. It was
remember
huge.
in Total Recall when he's got to pull that like thing out of his head and like his nose
Yes.
gets all big and stuff. Like that's what it reminded me of immediately.
Yeah. So gross, but that was a good example of what spice can do for you as Boba Fett went on this lizard drug dream. And not so much a dream, but like the walk into the desert and finding his path and coming up to this tree and breaking a branch off the tree and returning back. That the lizard was his GPS guide, and I thought it was a trippy, right? It was a really trippy ride. It also shown flashbacks to him climbing out of the Sarlacc pit. I think we got a bunch of comments regarding that last week. After episode 1, people wanted to see more of his struggle getting out of the Sarlacc pit, and we got a little bit of that as well. A little bit of another flashback when he was a kid watching, I assume, his dad in Slave One fly away from home. So I enjoyed as far as this fever dream that he went on, this desert quest, and I really like what came out of it. That now he gets a stick of his own, and it was really cool on how the episode took the time and the detail of him carving out his own weapon, like a rite of passage of being accepted by this clan, or I should say this tribe of Tusken Raiders, and then the celebration around the fire at the end. And
Mhm.
that's why I thought that really helped make this episode. And maybe this is the best episode of the bunch. We'll see. We still got what, 5 more episodes?
5 more episodes, yeah.
Yeah, in the Book of Boba Fett. And comparing episode 1 and episode 2, the director of this episode is Steph Green. She's an Emmy and Oscar nominated director. Her latest nominated work was for her work on The Watchmen, which was on HBO. So well thought of in the industry. And I thought she crushed it in this episode. And again, it really picks up, and the storytelling is just so awesome right now when we're going these flashback scenes with Boba Fett and the Tusken Raiders, this world building, getting to learn about this particular alien race that we just thought made a lot of weird noises until ObiWan Kenobi, makes some noises and saves Luke Skywalker, or they shoot pod racers in episode 1. I love the fever dream and what it leads to. So, as someone that may have gone on a couple of lizard-induced drug dreams, how did you like as far as this
Well,
whole sequence?
well, before I get into that, I do have a question for you, and this is more of a personal question here. So I know you've gone to Disney World and
Mhm.
you've done the lightsaber thing. Would you pay the same amount to do a gaffy stick?
It depends, because what was really cool with the gaffy stick is that it seemed like he was carving into symbols or designs that were really important to Boba Fett. So if you're able to do that, that would be cool. Now, knowing Disney, it would probably be about $2,000 to get your own gaffy stick. And I could just see like an 8-year-old with like their brother or sister just whacking each other with it throughout the park. So I'm not quite sure if Disney is going to allow that, but
I mean, Josh,
that
when I
would be
saw it,
cool.
I like one of the first things I thought was like there was a guy from Disney who like jumped out of his seat and was like called someone on his team and was like, "We need those sticks. You're gonna make those sticks. They're gonna be $400. Um, they're, they're gonna be made out of styrofoam."
Cut down the palm trees. We need wood ASAP.
So yeah, so the fever dream, to take it to a really weird place. Um, I don't know if you're familiar with the stoned ape theory. This is
No.
like so this is an evolutionary theory of like how fire and things like that came about, right? Like because animals generally are afraid of fire, right? So like,
Mhm.
why would someone create it? So the idea is that like let's call them apes or into early human man uh, would would do mushrooms, right? Like mushrooms just grow, right? Like so they're doing mushrooms and they're getting high and they're less afraid of things when this occurs, right? And so what I was thinking was, where are there trees on Tatooine? Like where are there trees left that he could actually go get this stick? They have to be somewhere. They definitely there used to be trees there. There used to be wood.
Mhm.
There's got to be like some old petrified trees sitting around somewhere, but you never see them, right? Like so my only thought is like he had to go to like some extra dangerous place. Like he had to traverse something crazy. And in his mind, because there's a lizard licking the frontal lobe of his brain, he didn't realize like what insane danger he was in getting to this tree. Um and or coming back from it. And like the extra piece of that that was like, yeah, I think that might have been the case was everyone seemed surprised he got back. Like no one was like, "Oh, he's back. Took you long enough." Everyone was like, "Oh, he didn't die." Like so like I think you know I think there's possibly something about where he went that might be explored, maybe not in this show, maybe in a comic or maybe in a book or something, but there might be somewhere. I think there's because it's this vast desert that no one wants to go in because there's giant monsters and there's just endless nothing. There might be some things in there that we're going to learn about, and this show is kind of like enticing you of like, yeah, there's wood out there. There's just trees. Just got to find them. There's spice, right? Maybe. I think that's it's kind of like going like you've seen this little piece of Tatooine, but it's this very mystical planet that you don't quite know much about yet. And we're going to show you some of it because we have free reign to do whatever we want on this planet and make it as important as we want it, right? So that
And
I'm interested to see what they do.
and I wonder, because of the timing here, we are learning about Tatooine post Return of the Jedi. The next series we're getting is Obi-Wan Kenobi, who becomes a hermit on Tatooine pre New Hope. So we're going back in time for the Obi-Wan Kenobi series. And I'm wondering, learning more about Tatooine in this setting during the timeline will help fill in the gaps that when we're watching Obi-Wan Kenobi, as far as the Kenobi series, we'll already have that previous knowledge by watching the Book of Boba Fett that will help fill in the gaps for the Kenobi series.
Yeah, like wouldn't it be cool if like, the place that Boba has to go to get this branch for his gaffy stick, like, you know, trees are big time in Jedi lore. right? Like there's all these like force sensitive trees. Like maybe these are kind of force sensitive, trees, or like strong in the force type of trees that Obi-Wan will end up at, right? I hope it's through the lizard path too, because I mean, if you want to talk about Ewan McGregor's great performances, I mean, one of them, he's pretty fucked up on drugs. All right, so I know he can do it. I know he can do it.
Good
But
stuff.
yeah, I think it's a lot of interesting stuff going on Tatooine, and I think that the more and more we get to explore, the minds of Favreau and Filoni, and in this case Robert Rodriguez, I'm sure to some extent, thinking about how this all relates. I think it's going to be really interesting, and if there truly is something valuable there, like if there are valuable things there, I think then you could start to see people like Doc Aphra show up, because there's something in wherever he got that gaffy stick from that's an archaeological find that she would want to get to. So if you're not familiar with Doc Aphra, she's basically the Indiana Jones of Star Wars universe, right? Like, so she's this young, cocky, kind of space archaeologist, we'll call her. She collects all kinds of different stuff. You see her with like Sith artifacts and things like that. Her books and comics are crazy if you want to check some of that out. But that makes sense for her. Black Sun, or even Kira coming in, that makes sense if there is something valuable there. If there's not, why would anyone care? Right? Like, I mean, like it's kind of, so I'm interested to see what this comes to, what we get out of this.
No, I mean, this is a good critique, and maybe we are going to learn more about Tatooine, and maybe that's, a byproduct of having this particular series. Because again, after Mandalorian season 2, we see Book of Boba Fett, and there's a lot of people asking, why do we need a whole TV series about someone that was a very minor character, look cool, but a very minor character in the original trilogy of the Star Wars movies? But if the Book of Boba Fett gives us more information about the criminal underground, it introduces the Pikes into this storyline of Star Wars, and if it does help fill the gap and answer some questions on why is Tatooine so important, that the twins don't want to lose control of Jabba's territory, it's a fascinating question, and hopefully we do get some answers in the upcoming episodes.
Yeah, I'm excited for him. I have one thought before we go, Josh. I was thinking about this the other day. And so, in the previews, they've shown Sophie Thatcher ride in. And like, we all had theories on who she might be. And I think we've upped the ante on that because Blacker Santan's here. And now you're like, oh, maybe it's Doc Aphra. Maybe that's who she is. And you're getting all these different ideas of who it could be. I don't think she's in the show. I think that is I don't think she ever shows up. That was just in the trailer. It was like the line in Major League, the first Major League, when he talks about hitting the ball out of wouldn't have been out of many parks, and then he's like says like Yellowstone or something, right? Like that's that scene never in the movie. This scene is not in the show. They just put it there for nerds like us to spend 7 weeks guessing at who the heck this is.
I'm not familiar with the actress, but I'm on her IMDb page. She's from Chicago.
That's pretty awesome.
She's in Yellow Jackets. Is that where you know her from?
I don't know her from anywhere. I'm not familiar.
All right. Yeah, she was in Chicago Med.
Okay.
She's Deb in Chicago Med. I don't know Chicago Med very well either.
I've seen one episode.
Yes, I have seen one episode as well.
Chorizy was in it. Yeah.
Yes. But yes, she's from Chicago, and there's no mention of the Book of Boba Fett on her IMDb. So IMDb is not giving away that secret for now.
Well, also because she's not in it. So, I think we just can agree that's not happening. But I'm going to guess every week every week I'm going to come back with a different person. This week it's Doc Afro.
It's not going to be who did we say last week could show up?
Well, we were talking about Omega showing up.
Omega.
We were talking about Omega showing up. I didn't think that was necessarily going to be her because the hair is very different.
Yeah.
But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows if she ever shows up?
Don't lose hope. Maybe she will show up.
We'll see. I just hope that like they keep rolling with some like really good minor characters, but the main ones that they kind of bring in are kind of like these new characters that we don't, like I still don't know what's going on with the Jennifer Beals character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know who the twins are. I don't know what's going on with this mayor that Robert Rodriguez is voicing and has this cool, like he basically has my headset, but on a way cooler head, and similar whiskers. Like I don't know who any of these people are, or aliens are, and like what they're gonna be. So I think that I like that because it leaves it kind of wide open.
Yeah.
Who's playing who? It's very, very heist movie like where you don't really trust anybody. And maybe we trust Fennec Shand too much right now. You don't even know. You have no idea. You also somewhere in this timeline, she gets those abs of steel. We got to figure out when that happens and who does it.
That's true.
But yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to talking to you about it because this has been a lot of fun, man. I'm really enjoying this. And I hope all you guys in the comments are enjoying it too. I wish I could have got to more comments today, but I was too deep in my Tuscan peyote lizard talk to really get to really pay attention as much as I would like to.
That's a good way of describing it.
That was Dale. I saw that in the. I was like, yeah, that is. I want one of those.
Again, so painful.
I mean, I really want to start one of these podcasts, and then I'm just sitting here and like you just see a lizard go up my nose, and then I just start telling you exactly what's going to happen the rest of the show.
Oh yeah, that'd be good.
Well, Josh,
set it up next week. I expect a lizard up your nose next week.
I'll do what I can. If I can find one of those, man, you'll be the first to know. But Josh, thanks for joining. And if in case you guys don't know, tomorrow, if you're not familiar with From the 108, I assume you are if you're joining this. But if you're not familiar with From the 108, tomorrow is 108 day. So we will be live at Reggie's, me and Josh, and the rest of the guys are going to be up there. It's sold out, but actually it might not be sold out right now. So there might be like 1 or 2 tickets floating. So check the link for the ticket. But even if you're not able to come, we're going to be dropping something very soon with some information on how you can get some really cool stuff from us, but it'll go to the charities that we're donating to this year. And there's also a blog about the charities we're donating to. Mine is Darkest Before Dawn, which helps people who work like these crazy hour jobs, working in nightlife and entertainment and those things, and just live a life at night, which is can have a lot of bad effects for people. So they really help them out. Check that out. Wait for the 108 day stuff. It'll be dropping. I think it might drop tonight. I'm talking with the guys, and we might drop the info tonight. The thing we're selling this year is absolutely hilarious. So everyone will want this. There's not a person that will not want this. This is so like my Sock Summer showed it to me, and I was like, this is so funny. I can't imagine someone passing on this. So get ready for that. It'll be up soon. And we'll see some of you tomorrow, and the rest of you we will talk to very soon. Josh, thank you again, man. Great time.
Later, everyone.